It's just a bunch of hocus pocus, darling. I'm so thirsty. Look at that cute dog. I love you so much. Oh, hello. Hey book besties, welcome back to another video. We are here today to share some of our favorite fall romance book recommendations. So I know I've already posted my fall TBR for my personal books that I want to get to this summer. Oh, thanks for that. I know I've already posted my own fall TBR for the books I want to get to this season, but these are going to be my personal romance recommendations for the fall season. So all romance books, and the majority of these I've already read. I think there's 2 or 3 that are on my TBR, but the majority of these are books that I've already read and I think are perfect to read during the fall. So if you're like me and you're a fellow romance girly, these are going to be the perfect books for you to read over the next couple of months. My dog just got so much fur on my shirt and I just delinted for this video, so I was gonna look all nice and put together for you guys, but it just wasn't in the cards, so I tried. I do love my shirt. It's a bunch of hocus pocus and I think it's the cutest thing ever. I love the Hocus Pocus movies, and every year I go to my sister's house and we have a fall sleepover like we're little kids again, and we do cookie decorating and we make dessert and we watch Hocus Pocus and we lay on her floor with our blankets, and she has a projector and we turn out all the lights and she projects like the Hocus Pocus things on the ceiling, and it's the best thing in the whole wide world. We love the fall, and yeah, it's just the most amazing thing ever. So anyways, my shirt reminded me of Hocus Pocus and I had to go on my little tangent. But I am ready to hop into these fall romance book recommendations. So grab your Goodreads, grab your pen and paper, grab your TBR list, and get ready because I'm going to give you some of the best romance books for this fall. I'm going to start, I have a couple of different series that I think would be great for the fall season. So I'm going to start with one that's actually on my personal TBR, and that is the Magnolia Park series. And I am saying that this is going to be great for the fall season because I think that this is a series that you can get super duper into, and I think once you're into it, you are pretty sucked into it from everything I've seen. And I feel like fall is the perfect time to like cozy up with a book or a series and just kind of plow your way through it. Like it's rainy, it's cold, you're in a sweater, you have a blanket and coffee, and just sitting down to read books kind of cover to cover. And that's my goal for the Magnolia Park series. So I've heard that these books are basically Gossip Girl if it were set in London. So I love that. Gossip Girl is one of my fall comfort shows. Something about that show just like screams the fall season to me, and so if these books really are like Gossip Girl, then it feels like the fall vibes are just immaculate. And this is on my personal fall TBR, so I wanted to share these with you. If you want to read these alongside me, pick them up. We're going to read them this fall. Another series that I think would be absolutely amazing to read in the fall is the Addicted Calloway Sister series. So this is actually a 10-book series. So you read the first 3 Addicted books, which I do have here: Addicted to You, Ricochet, and Addicted for Now. Then you go into the first couple Calloway sister books, and then you come back to the Addicted series, and there's a whole reading order. Just look it up. It's all online. You can figure it out pretty easily. But this series, I would recommend them for the fall because they start with kind of a school background. They're in college, and this is another series that you can totally binge read. And I actually just finished the last book in the series. It was just in my last monthly wrap-up. The final 3 books in the series actually were in that wrap-up. And this is my favorite series of all time. This is like a 6-star series for me. The Addicted series is about Lily and Lo. His name's Lauren. He goes by Lo. He's an alcoholic, she's a sex addict, and they are childhood friends, and they are fake dating to basically enable each other's addictions and hide their addictions from their family. And the first couple books, I did not like it. I didn't like the enabling. I didn't like the storyline. I didn't love them as characters. But as I stuck with it, I grew to love them. And as you move forward, you meet Rose Calloway and Daisy Calloway, which are 2 of Lily's sisters. And you meet Reich Meadows and you meet Connor Cobalt. And it's 3 couples basically. They're called the Core 6, and it's 3 couples, and you follow them. They are wealthy, they are rich, their parents own very, very successful companies. They live in Philly and kind of that East Coast area, high class life. Their stories and their characters are phenomenal. Every single character in this book just feels like family to me now, and I cannot recommend this series enough. So if you haven't read these, pick them up, read them this fall season. I can almost guarantee that you will not regret reading these. I highly recommend this series. The next two books are standalones that are actually both on my fall TBR. That is The Kiss Curse and that's wrong. That's not even The Kiss Curse. The Ex-Hex and The Kiss Curse. I picked these up and they just like scream Halloween to me. So The Ex-Hex is about Vivian Jones, and she tries to put a hex on her ex, so she tries to curse him, and it kind of goes wrong and the whole town ends up getting cursed, and they're under attack from like wind-up toys and a ghost and a talking cat and like some weird spooky Halloween things going on, and she ends up having to work with her ex that she tried to put the curse on to like save their town. So feels cheesy and just fun and kind of out there and Halloween and spooky and all the things. So I just feel like this is going to be a really fun read for October specifically. And then same with The Kiss Curse. This is about Gwen Jones, and I think she runs like a pretty successful witchcraft shop, and she like mentors young witches, and this guy comes into town and they are like professional rivals kind of. So it's giving like stereotypical Hallmark romance Christmas movie where like the two shop owners in the small town are butting heads and then they have romance, and I'm here for the cheesiness, and it's like a Halloween spin-off of that. So I just feel like this is going to be the cutest, most perfect fall read. And these are written by the same woman. It's Erin Sterling, and I want to give these a shot. I've heard a lot about the Ex-Hex. I've heard less about The Kiss Curse, but I picked it up while I was shopping online because it just felt like they went together. So I picked up both these and I want to get to them in October. Another book I would recommend you read this fall is Most of All You by Mia Sheridan. And Mia Sheridan is the author of Archer's Voice. If you don't know, you've probably heard of Archer's Voice. This book is a little less popular, and I think that's fair. I mean, I didn't love this one as much as Archer's Voice, but this is about Crystal and Gabriel, and both of them come from pretty wounded, dark pasts, and they run into each other at her job, and he falls for her like pretty quickly. This is definitely a he falls first trope, and she's like, get away, like keep you at distance. And that's what I actually didn't like about this, is I felt like he met her once and he was like, I just love you, I'm clinging to you, I'm obsessed with you, I need you. And that to me was a little bit ick, like leave her alone. But something ends up happening to her and she ends up having to stay with him, and he cares for her. And so it's a little bit of forced proximity here, and I ended up really liking them. They're both deeply complex, wounded, hurt individuals, and the way that they come together I thought was pretty beautiful in a lot of ways. There's a lot I didn't love about this book, but there's a lot I also did like about this book. But if you're looking for just kind of a standalone, quicker romance, this is definitely one that I think is worth the read. I did enjoy it. I think I ended up giving it like 3.75 stars. So it is a good one. It's no competition for Archer's Voice, which also you could read that during the fall time. I feel like the small town trope is always good during the fall, but this is another good one that I think is worth the read if you're looking for a romance to read this fall. Kind of like I was just saying with Archer's Voice, I feel like small town gives me fall vibes, even if the books aren't necessarily set in the fall. And that also comes with Things We Never Got Over. So this is a book that I actually just finished like a couple days ago, and this book, the third one in the series, just came out. So it's Things We Never Got Over. I have Things We Hide from the Light over there, and Things We Left Behind is the one that just came out. It's the purple one. That's how I know them. But this follows Knox and Naomi. So Naomi ends up going to a small town of Knockamout to meet with her sister and try to help her sister. Long story short, her sister is not a good person, and Naomi gets left with her sister's 11-year-old daughter, Waylay. And so she's in this small town with nobody. She has no money. She's a runaway bride. She ran out on her wedding and ends up in this small town, left with an 11-year-old, and she's like, what the heck do I do? The small town really comes together for her, but most of all, she meets Knox Morgan, and he is gruff and grumpy and big and manly and just kind of harsh, but he has a major soft spot for Naomi. He's very protective of her. And so this is like small town, opposites attract, grumpy, I don't want to say grumpy sunshine because she doesn't like him either. It's almost like grumpy. It's sort of enemies to lovers. I don't like using the phrase enemies to lovers in romance books because I don't feel like they're really enemies. It's more just like they don't get along. But this is kind of enemies to lovers, but the small town vibes and the found family in this book are what make it feel kind of like a cozy fall read. I don't know. Anytime there's like deep found family, specifically in a small town, it feels like fall to me. It just gives me comfort and gives me cozy. So I think this book is another great one to read during the fall, and this is another series that you could binge as well. I didn't recommend the second or the third because I haven't read them yet, but this one I have read and I thought it was enjoyable. So if you haven't read this yet, I know I'm a little bit behind the curve on this, but if you also are and you haven't gotten to this one, I thought it was cute, and the small town vibes definitely gave off some fall energy. Next, I actually just have an author as a whole, and that is Abby Jimenez, and I cannot say enough good things about her. The first book I read by her is Life's Too Short, which is actually in the middle of a series, and I didn't know that at the time. They're interconnected standalones, so you can read them on their own, but I didn't even know I was doing that. I would have started at the beginning if I knew. But I just recently picked up The Friend Zone, I picked up Part of Your World, and then I picked up Yours Truly. So this is actually a series here. And then The Friend Zone, I believe, is the first book in the series that I started in the middle when I read Life's Too Short. But Abby Jimenez as a whole just is one of my favorite romance authors right now. I did not read her books for a long time just because I never got to them. Like, they just never made it on my TBR. And then for some reason, I picked up Life's Too Short at the library. They had it as I was wandering the aisles, and I was like, oh, I recognize her name. Like, I've heard people talk about her, so I picked it up. I loved her writing style. I love her characters. I love the way that she covers deep, serious, meaningful topics in books that on the outside look like lighthearted rom-coms. I just think it's really important, the work that she's doing, and I love that each of her books is kind of dedicated to a specific, deeper, meaningful topic. I think that's really cool, and she does a really great job, in my opinion, of portraying it appropriately and accurately and compassionately through her writing. So I just think Abby Jimenez has so much talent, and I love her. So pick up her books if you're looking for romances this fall. I can't say enough good things about her. Another author I would recommend for the fall is Taylor Jenkins Reid, and specifically I picked After I Do and One True Loves. These are two of my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid books, and ironically they're two of the books that I feel like are not talked about the most. Like, everyone talks about Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and Malibu Rising, and for good reason. Like, I love those books too, but One True Loves and After I Do are two books that I really loved by her. So One True Loves is about Emma, and she marries her high school sweetheart Jesse, and he goes missing in a what we assume is a plane crash. Like, he just never returns, so we assume that he has died. So she's obviously like devastated. She's grieving him. Later down the line, she ends up finally moving on, and she is engaged to Sam. And then as she's with Sam one night, she gets a phone call, and it's from Jesse. So now she has a husband and she has a fiance. She thought her husband had died. She had kind of grieved him and their relationship, and she had finally had the strength and the courage to move on and fall for somebody else. And now her husband is coming back and he's alive. I just think this book is amazing, and if you haven't read it yet, I definitely would recommend. And then After I Do is one of my favorite books, and I don't know why it doesn't get talked about more. It's about Lauren and Ryan, and they're a married couple, and their marriage is kind of at like its breaking point. Neither of them are feeling very happy in their marriage, and they are desperate to figure out what to do. Like, do they split up? Do they stay together? What's the next steps, right? And so they take kind of a unconventional, untraditional approach, and they decide that they're going to go 1 year basically acting like they're single, and there's no rules. They can date other people. They can do whatever they want. The only rule is that they cannot contact each other for 1 year. So you follow Lauren as she's going this year without contacting her husband, like the closest person to her. And she's leaning on her sister, she's leaning on her mom and her grandma and her family. And this book explores, like, again, soulmates, marriage, the meaning of marriage. Like, you see her work through, does she prefer being independent? It explores independence themes, and I loved the side characters in this book. Like the sister, I just really resonated with the sister. which is cool. I love when the side characters feel deep as well. I just think Taylor Jenkins Reid does a phenomenal job about her character development. I love them. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. Just think that she doesn't have a bad book out there. I really don't. But these ones are really great. Another great one by her is Forever Interrupted. That's definitely a darker one. Again, it deals with grief and death and losing somebody you love. So a more sensitive one for sure, but another amazing read by her. Next up, I would recommend Book Lovers, and I'm actually not sure when this book is set. I think it's set in the summer. Yeah, for the month of August. So it's definitely set in the summertime, but this is another one that has the small town vibes that make me feel like it would be a good read for the fall time. So this is about Nora and Charlie, and they're basically professional rivals. They're both in the book industry. I think she is a literary agent. Yeah, she's a literary agent, and I think Charlie's an editor. Yep, I'm right. So she's an agent, he's an editor, and they butt heads. They do not get along. They have a moment where they meet, and this is another kind of enemies to lovers, but they meet and they hate each other, and then they both happen to end up in this small town, like outside of the big city where they met, and they both happen to be here, and they run into each other, and it's just about them and their enemies to lovers storyline. Small town. I love the sister dynamics in this book. This I read in my reading romance for a week, so I have a funny backstory with this book. So if you want to hear me go on and on about that, that is in my reading romance for a week reading vlog. But I have read this book twice, and I DNF'd it the first time. I hated it. Second time, loved it. Long story short, I just think it's great, and I'm an Emily Henry fan now. I didn't used to be, but I am now, and I think this is a really good read for the fall. Even though it's technically set in the summer, I feel like it would be a good cozy small town read for the fall time. Just have a couple of books left here, and one of them is on my own TBR. That is The Deal. I chose this book just because it is set in like a school setting. It's about a college campus and couples on a college campus. So I'm pretty sure this is about Garrett Graham and Hannah Wells. I think this is fake dating. I don't know a ton about this. I know that this is a series. I've heard that the series gets a bit repetitive if you read the whole thing. So I personally have only committed to reading the first book. I've heard the best things about Garrett Graham, and this is his book. They're interconnected standalones. So I have committed to reading the first book in the series. If I fall in love with this, I might continue through the off-campus series, but as of now, this is the only one on my TBR, but I want to read it this fall because, like I said, that school college setting kind of gives me fall energy. I don't know, like back to school season, that type of thing. So this is another book that I think would be great for the fall and when I will be reading. So if you want to read it together, pick it up and let's do it. So my second to last book is a unique one, and that is What Might Have Been by Holly Miller. So this book is about Lucy, and her life is kind of at a crossroads. She says goodbye to her job, she leaves her job that she doesn't like, and she is faced with a really big decision. She can either kind of stay in her comforting hometown with her family and the life that she has known and pursue her dreams to become an author, or she can move to London, move back to the big city, and try to revive like this big successful career. And along with that comes two different men. So this starts with one specific moment where she has a fortune, I believe, or like a horoscope that says she's going to meet her soulmate that day. And that night she runs into this new guy she meets. His name's Caleb, and she's like, oh my gosh, this could be the guy. And that same night she happens to run into her long-term ex-boyfriend Max. Total coincidence. They haven't seen each other in years, and she's like, wait, which one of these guys was meant to be my soulmate? So she has like these two totally different lives that she can choose from, and from that moment this book splits, and every other chapter is alternating, like if she had chosen the life in London with the career or the stay-at-home life and the boys that come with it. And it reminds me of Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid, if you've read that, where it's like basically explores choice versus fate and destiny, and explores two totally different options based on if she had just made one different choice. This book feels really hard and really confusing to explain, so I hope I explained that right, but I just think that this has almost like fantasy vibes with like being able to live out two parallel alternate realities. And just that like whimsical feel I think is really cool for the fall time. Last but not least, if you want to sob your eyes out this fall, If He Had Been With Me. This is a YA book. I normally am not a YA fan, but I just love this book. This is about Autumn and Finney. There are some moments in this where It's a little bit cringy, it's a little bit too YA, but this book as a whole, I just loved. Aside from 1,000 Boy Kisses, I don't know if I've ever cried so hard at a book. This one really got to me, and you know what's coming. Like, you know the end result of this book is devastation, yet you get to the chapter and you read the words and you just can't stop the tears. You really can't. What's cool about this one though, if you read this fall, is the second book in the series. I think it's called If Only I Had Told Her. I don't know, I pre-ordered it. I think it's coming out early next year. So if you read this one this fall, you do have a second book to look forward to in relatively a short period of time. Like, it is coming out pretty soon. So this is another book that I think would be great for the fall time. So those are all my fall romance book recommendations. I love reading romance in the fall. I love cozy romances. I love darker romances. I love witchy romances and just series and back to school and all the fall vibes and all the things that just symbolize fall, I think are so fun for reading. And it's just so much more fun to read in the fall. Like, when it's rainy and it's cozy and you just want to like curl up with a good book, it's the best feeling ever. So hopefully you found some new fall romances from my list here. Question of the video, let me know down below your #1 romance recommendation for the fall season. This is your permission to go get a PSL or a pumpkin cream cold brew or whatever you want, grab a book and curl up and read for the rest of the day. Because that's what I'm about to go do with this little puppy behind me. As always, thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you found a new book to pick up or some inspiration for your own fall romance TBR from this video. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any future bookish videos, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, book besties.